gone through my childhood in the previous episode and having graduated with an economics degree, what was my next natural step? Well, a lot of my friends were going into grad schemes, but I wanted to continue learning. I was really enjoying the subject and I felt I had a real grasp of it, and I thought, you know what? The next natural step for me on the golden child path of, okay, got a degree, now need to get a master's. Felt right, felt natural. I was enjoying the subject. It was cost effective. I could afford the extra year, and it would just extend my enthusiasm for the subject and be a good thing to put on my CV. So I changed university for that. Nottingham offered a good deal, good in terms of like accommodation and what they're going to cover and this kind of thing. But the league tables had changed slightly around that time. So, Warwick became a more viable option in terms of what they were offering, slightly closer to home. And I was all set to go. I'd been approved for a place and, was pretty much all ready to go until UCL in London stepped in at the last minute with an offer. So I figured, you know what? It's a little bit more expensive, but I get to stay at home. I save on accommodation and, living in Northwest London, commuting to Central London is dead simple. So, okay, I took the UCL option instead. So, before they started the year's programme in earnest, UCL had what they call a starter or orientation session, just to get everybody onto the same page, because everybody would have come from different unis, different perspectives, different specialities. So before we all started, they wanted to get us all into the same place. It was from that starter and orientation session that I thought, okay, I think I've made a big mistake here, because as the session was going on, I didn't have a clue what was going on, because the teaching style that they were providing was entirely different to what I encountered at Nottingham previously. They were going at such a fast pace, it seemed like a different language altogether, and it didn't feel like there was a kind of supportive element to it. It was more kind of like, well, everybody should be attuned to this pace and this style of working. Not my fault if you're not, basically. I looked around the room and felt that was the same kind of vibe that was happening as well. That people were like, what is going on? Yeah, look, people are going to go, well, that's the master's level. That's kind of to be expected, no? But for me, it was just a big shock to the system of like, okay, wow, this is entirely different. And essentially that was indicative of my year there, to be honest. There's a couple of highlights that, written down here that like, during the course of the year, we had the senior lecturer have a nervous breakdown in the middle of the lecture, which didn't really help things. And he was then taken over by a unassuming postgraduate student who was like, what is going on here? Now, he did the best he could, but it didn't feel like, well, this is, a year's master's degree that I'm operating under, right? So for the first time in a long while, it felt like I was a bit directionless and didn't really know what to do. And even coming to the dissertation at the end of the degree, which I thought I'd really enjoy, and I picked a topic that I felt I would enjoy, which was the economics of sporting events. It didn't really lift my enthusiasm. And I remember even sort of scrambling to finish it, and then because they wanted it all bound, and I guess published and printed, if you will, to get that, publishing and binding done, I had to go to Office World in a scramble on the last day, get it done there, and then drop it off by hand in central London, which is where UCL is, on the very last day. And on the night before, I had a real sense of like, I don't really want to carry on with this course, and I felt like giving up. And that I felt was the first time that I didn't feel good enough. Now I struggled on manfully, with the course as it was, and at the same time was trying to find a place on a grad scheme at the end of my degree. So all being told, that year at UCL was a shit show and a waste of money. The enthusiasm for the subject had been sapped out of me, and the cherry on the cake that I end my time there with is that I look back and remember that every lecture, tutorial, and exam was in the same room. It was an underground / basement room, which I called the dungeon for the reason of there was a lack of light coming into the room, natural light, and it just felt like, okay, this just feels like, I don't know, an office or something like that. But anyway, my time at UCL ended in a bit of a whirlwind, but also at the time Liverpool lost the Champions League final in Athens, and as it turned out, that was a changing point, or turning point I should say, in the reign of Rafa Benitez, who I'd looked up to a lot, and it was actually a trigger point for like a 4-year civil war that in terms of the club, where Liverpool nearly ended up being wound up into administration for a lack of financial control and all that kind of thing. All that aside, I'd managed to bag a place on the grad scheme of the world's most prestigious investment bank, Goldman Sachs.